I am William Kiker. I'm committed to Dartmouth for the class of 2029. I was born in Alabama. I lived there for the first 14 years of my life. I went to a public elementary school. I was homeschooled through middle school, transferred into high school my sophomore year, and I was heavily involved in speech and debate, heavily involved in Quiz Bowl, and so those were the main things that appeared on my college application. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. How do you think the homeschool kind of shaped you?
How did it?
Because
I mean, I think it did two things. So it served as like a break between two distinct, I think, times in my life where, like, when I lived in Alabama, and now, oh, I should have mentioned this as well. I'm currently living in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, which is in the Florida Panhandle. And so living in Alabama was a much more rural setting, and there were a lot fewer, opportunities and things to do. I don't live in the most populated part of Florida right now, so there's still kind of, a lack of stuff here, but back in Alabama, there was very little. But when I was homeschooled, there was a lot of, I felt very isolated when I was homeschooled. And so it feels like a time in my life that was almost a bridge between two different eras where, like, now in high school, I have lots of things to do and lots of people and, large support network. And I didn't have any of that when I was homeschooled, and I had that to a much less extent in Alabama, but the two that I had in Alabama and here in Florida are completely different, right? There's very few people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis now that I did when I lived in Alabama, except like my parents.
Great. Okay, so what do you think was your like initial reaction when you were like, okay, I'm going to Dartmouth now? You got the
So
acceptance letter.
yeah, it kind of came in waves because I come
Mm-hmm.
from a middle class family, so we didn't know whether I would be able to actually afford to go to Dartmouth whenever I got the acceptance letter. And so for a long time I was like University of Florida, University of Florida, University of Florida because they have here in Florida we have the Bright Futures scholarship program, which is if you have a high enough GPA and high enough test scores, you qualify for free tuition to any public university in the state of Florida that accepts you. So I did get accepted into the University of Florida, and which is a great, it's a great school. It's like one of the top five public universities, and I could go with free tuition. And so for a long time, I was thinking, that's just the obvious path. That's what I wanted to do. And so when I opened up Dartmouth, I was thinking, it's really awesome that they accepted me, but just financially, I didn't think it would be possible to go. The thing that made it possible is that we ended up getting more financial aid than we expected to, and we ended up getting some support from other family members. But it was kind of a drawn out process of realization. There was no one moment where I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to Dartmouth." Like there was no light switch that flipped, if that makes sense.
Okay, okay, makes sense. Yeah, I think like Dartmouth is need blind as well.
Dartmouth is
So
what?
need blind.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah. So like if you get accepted, you get the financial aid you require. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's good. Yeah. All right. Did you like? I asked this to like everyone because I used to do that. Used to do that as well. Like, did you used to watch like college reaction videos
Oh, I
with
still do.
students?
Yeah, all the time. I love those videos.
Yeah. But like, I remember I used to think that, damn man, I'm not impressive enough compared to these
Mhm.
people, Like, and I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, how did you get past that mindset? Because I feel like a lot of high school students right now would be struggling with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've always like when I was looking at those videos, I was thinking, yeah, these people have probably more competitive applications than I do, but I didn't think that my application was so far off of them that it wasn't worth trying. And
Hmm.
watching those college admissions videos, I think is actually what inspired me to apply to a lot of colleges rather than apply to just a few. Because I was like, well, I can never, based on someone's stats, say they're going to get into, Harvard but not Yale, or they're going to get into Dartmouth but not Brown, or something like that. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I might as well apply to all sorts of different places because if I think my stats and like my application is competitive enough to be considered at these top colleges, the more I apply to, the greater the chances are of getting an acceptance, just mathematically.
Yeah.
And that's why Dartmouth made the list actually, because Dartmouth wasn't like my top choice going into the process. My top choice going into the process was Georgetown, but I just wanted to apply to a bunch of different places. And then when I got the Dartmouth acceptance and I started looking more into the school, I was like, oh my goodness, this actually is a really great fit for me. And that's something that I had no idea of heading into the admissions process.
Okay, so like it was just random. Like you didn't decide before that you wanted to go to Dartmouth.
No, no, not at all. I was just applying to all like the private out of state
Hmm.
schools that were not STEM schools that were ranked higher than UF. and Dartmouth was on that list. And then when I got the interview, I looked into the college and I said, wow, this college is actually really cool. And then I got the acceptance, went to campus and
Hmm.
stuff like that. That's how I fell in love with Dartmouth. But that didn't
Yeah,
happen until much later on.
I love the campus as well.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so enriched with nature. And I think I saw a deer yesterday just running around campus. It was so cool.
Like
Yeah.
literally on the campus.
Yeah, on the
That's awesome.
campus. And there's like rivers and you can go
Yeah.
hiking and everything. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so cool. Well, that's great. Like let's get into the meat of your application. You said you applied to a couple of colleges, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you do ED, EA or anything or just already?
Yeah, so I applied, I guess, in two like waves, because the first wave of admissions that I sent were all early action, and these were the colleges that before heading into the process, I already knew a little bit about, or that I knew that I wanted to apply to. So I applied to the University of Florida early action. I applied to Georgetown early action. That wasn't early decision. They don't have early decision program. Like none of the early stuff I sent
Yeah.
was binding. So I applied to UF, Georgetown, early action. Those were my top two. And then FSU, University of Alabama, Creighton, which is where my mom went to college, and then South Florida and West Florida were applications that I sent out because I was like, these are safety schools. So even if somehow I
Yeah.
get rejected from UF and Georgetown, which were my top two, I'll be able to go to college at least.
Okay. And then you did Dartmouth and did you do any other IVs?
Yeah, I applied to every Ivy except for Penn. And thinking back, I really have
Mm-hmm.
no idea why I didn't apply to Penn. But I applied to all the Ivies except Penn, and then I applied to Vanderbilt, Northwestern, let me remember, Duke, this college called the New School in New York City. It gave me direct admission, so I was like, I might as well, because it seemed interesting. NYU, Emory, I think that's all. I might be forgetting somewhere. But I applied to a lot of different colleges. And Northwestern.
And
Northwestern.
like if you don't mind answering, like, how many did you get into?
I got into so all of the colleges that I applied in like my first little batch, I got into all of them except Georgetown. Georgetown
Mm-hmm.
deferred me from early action, and then I got rejected. And then from that like second batch of colleges, I got into Dartmouth, Emory, and NYU. I got waitlisted at Vanderbilt and Brown, and I got rejected everywhere else.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. All right. So, what were the stats and GPA? Like, what were the test scores and GPA that got you into Dartmouth?
Okay, so I had a 3.91 unweighted GPA, and then the way my school does weighting is I think this is how most schools do it, is you get +1 for an AP class or college class, plus zero point
Mm.
0.5 for an honors class. So I graduated with a GPA of 4.54, but I applied to colleges at 4.51 because, second semester senior year GPA boosted it
Yeah.
slightly. I had a 35 on the ACT for my like composite score, so that was like my best. Like when I took the test and got a 35, but I took the test multiple times, so I had a
Hmm.
36 super score on the ACT. And then I graduated concurrently with an associate's degree and a high school diploma because there's a local college, Northwest Florida State College. It's not quite a community college, but it's basically a community college. And they have programs for high school students to dual enroll and then combined with AP credit, graduate with an associate's degree. And so I did that as well.
Okay, great. I think a lot of people might be curious as well. Like, were
Mhm.
you ranked number one in your class, or were there people ahead of you?
No, there are actually quite a few people ahead of me. We have a class size of a little under 400, and I was ranked. I graduated at 25. I think I applied at 28. So no, I was not. I would say I wasn't even anywhere near the top of my class in my high school.
Okay, I think this gives a lot of hope for people who are just like discarding themselves already if they're
Yeah,
not
I
in
think
like the top
so.
10.
Yeah, because it's not all about academics, because there are
Hmm.
tons of people in my high school that had better academics, and I think I come from just like a run-of-the-mill public high school, right? So I go to Fort Walton Beach High School, which is, or I went to Fort Walton Beach High School, I should say, which is, it's a good school, don't get me wrong. Like the district I'm in is an above average district in Florida. The high school is a little bit above average for a district. Florida's a little bit above average for the nation. But like, my school has a graduating class of like 1,600 each year. We send maybe one or two people to these like top colleges. It's just kind of a run of the mill public high school. And so, it's in my academics, at least from a GPA perspective, weren't like insanely high. Once you have kind of you're getting basically close to all A's and you're taking a maximally rigorous or close to maximally rigorous course schedule, there's not a whole lot of delineation, I feel, between, do you have a 4.5 or a 4.6 or like a 4.68 or whatever. Like, they care, but not like a ton.
Okay. So like let's talk about your course schedule. So what was your the course schedule that impressed Dartmouth?
Yeah, so freshman year, I was homeschooled alongside, when I was in middle school. I had taken a few college classes already, or not a few college classes, sorry, a few high school classes already. So the only AP class I took freshman year was AP macroeconomics, and then I took a few honors classes as well. I'm trying to remember what they were. I think I took honors algebra 2. I don't know. My freshman year class schedule was not like insane. And then sophomore year is when I transferred into the high school, so this I'll be able to remember better. So I took regular sophomore English, which everyone in our school takes ACE English their sophomore year. Honors pre-calculus, honors chemistry, AP microeconomics that was online. And then I took driver's ed and like I took some kind of throwaway classes like driver's ed, leadership. I took debate, which was a big part of my academic career. And then each semester, including over the summer, I was taking 2 online classes at the college to work on my associate's degree. And then junior year, that's when I started taking like a lot of actual AP classes in person. So I took AP Calculus AB, AP Chemistry, AP Lang, and AP US History, alongside some self-study APs. And then senior year was AP Literature, AP World, um, oh goodness, Calc PC, Biology, and Statistics. And then senior year, I wasn't taking classes at Northwest Florida anymore because I had already gotten enough credits. I knew from my AP scores I would be able to get my associate's degree.
Did you like craft this schedule for your major, or like did you were you just picking it just because you found them interesting?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically each year I was taking classes that I was interested in taking. I think just
Hmm.
my general, I guess, view is that I like to take rigorous courses in a lot of different areas, right? So I play Quiz Bowl, and so I like to just have a lot of knowledge and understanding about the world. And so, as I was crafting my schedule each year, I wanted to have a diverse set of classes, and I wanted to take, the most difficult classes offered to me, which, if you were planning out from your freshman year, I don't think what you would end up with is hugely different from what I actually ended up with, just kind of doing it year by year. But no, to answer your question, I wasn't, this wasn't part of like a grand strategy. It was just each year I would get the form and then I would figure out what classes I could take and what I was most interested in.
Okay, great. Good to know. Also, like you also mentioned you had a 36 ACT by the end,
Hmm.
yeah?
Yeah, I did.
And could you tell us how many times did you take the ACT
I
and like what was your starting score versus your final score?
Yeah, so I took the ACT first after my freshman year. I think I took it 5 times in total. I kept taking the ACT just because I wanted to just maximize the super score. Although that turned out, I don't think as important as I thought it would be. Because I don't think, like, there's a lot of colleges that accept the super score, but I don't think all of them do. And I think most of the ones I applied to actually didn't. So I took it the first time after my freshman year, and I got a 30. And then after my sophomore year, I think it bumped up to a 32 with the 33 super score. But what I did to study and to improve each time is I got the TIR reports that the ACT offers, which is when you can get your test book back and you can look at exactly what questions you missed. And so the first time I took it after my sophomore year, I got the report back and I looked at my math section and I was like, what on earth was I doing? There was a bunch of questions that I was like, I have no business missing this. Like I subtracted numbers wrong and that's why I missed a question on the ACT. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I took it again over sophomore summer, boosted it to a 30. I boosted it by 1 point basically to a 33 composite 34 super score. And then I took it 2 more times during my junior year, one in September and one in February. September, it boosted my score like another point, and then the February test is what I got the 35 on, and then the 36 super score. And so, to me at least, it was hugely valuable starting to take the test early, because if you leave it until your junior year to start taking the test, then, on top of your difficult class and extracurricular schedule that you have over your junior year, and on top of applying to colleges over the summer, you also have to deal with test taking. And like I was done with taking standardized exams like those college, ACT, SAT in February of my junior year. And that would just like from a peace of mind perspective, knowing for that long that I had the score I needed was really valuable to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great increase. I think I did SAT and
Hmm.
I could only do like one. I did like a 170 point increase over a year. I took it three times.
Hmm.
Yeah, like take us through your testing journey. Was it like they come naturally to you, or did you have to like brute
The
force it? Because
Yeah,
I
I would say other than the math section, it I don't want to say came naturally because that might be the
Mhm.
wrong way of describing it, but I feel like, in the math section there was just a lot of content that I wasn't doing great on because I felt like over the course of being homeschooled, I was missing some concepts that I should have had. So I had to put a lot of effort into boosting my math section score. And basically the score increase that you have is made up overwhelmingly, like my math section went from like a 26 to like a 35. The other scores boosted by like a point or two, but the math section is what really, really increased. So that I don't think came naturally. The other sections, I think I was taking classes that prepared me adequately for those. AP Lang, for example, helped a lot in the reading and the writing, or the reading English section. AP Chemistry helped a lot in the science section. And so I felt like just over the course of taking difficult high school classes, I was by proxy almost getting preparation for the ACT. And then just taking the test over and over again helped a lot because that made me more familiar with the way the questions were worded, patterns, and like what the answer is going to be to a style of question and that kind of thing. There was a lot of dedicated studying for the math section, not as much for the other sections because those they started relatively high and I only had to boost them by a point or two, and that came through just taking more difficult classes in high school and taking the test multiple times.
okay, yeah. So you're basically saying like classes basically complement each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. Like I get a lot of questions from high schoolers which are like who are like kind of scared of taking difficult courses because they
Hmm.
feel like they might not be able to prepare for the tests. But I think your experience would greatly help them in that regard. Okay, so let's talk about application preparation.
Right.
When did you really start focusing seriously on building your extracurricular profile?
So I don't think I ever was trying to do extracurriculars in high school for the purpose of college applications. And so I don't think there was ever a time, except for one instance, and this was actually a mistake, which is when I had the choice to go to Boys State or to debate nationals. And I chose Boys State because I thought it would look good on college applications. And that turned out to actually be a mistake. Like I didn't enjoy Boys State and I would have much rather gone to nationals. And so I think my extracurricular involvement it was stuff that I was just kind of inherently interested in. And so speech and debate and quiz bowl were the two big extracurriculars that I did all throughout high school. Like there was some other stuff, but those were mostly like I would occasionally go to a club meeting and I wouldn't really do anything. And I think what am I trying to say? I never decided to go into speech and debate or decided to go into Quiz Bowl because I was like, this would look really good on my college application, or, preparing for this tournament so that I can win means that I can put it on my application that I was the Harvard semifinalist in congressional debate or something like that. It was all that I thought that speech and debate and Quiz Bowl provided benefits to me regardless of how it helped my college application, right? So debate helped me develop skills in public speaking or skills in argument in research that were helpful in classes, can be helpful in a career, and that had also the effect of giving me an impressive extracurricular resume for college applications, but that was never the goal. Same with Quiz Bowl, that it gave me a broad base of knowledge that was useful to me in taking classes and in careers and conversations. And the ancillary effect of that was that my college application was boosted, but there was never a deliberate thought in my head of I really need to stick with these extracurriculars because look at all the cool things that I have on a resume now that'll look good for a college application.
So yeah, so basically what you're saying is, just to make it clear for the viewers, is that do not focus on building a great extracurricular profile, rather than just focus on what you think would benefit you, and that's what worked for you, right?
Yeah, because you can never guarantee anything in college admissions. And so I think that when you try to create an extracurricular profile for the purpose of college admissions, you end up taking time and focus away from those doing those things that will benefit you regardless of what your college admissions outcome is. So I'm not saying like, don't do a lot of extracurriculars, don't involve yourself outside of the classroom because we're not going to focus on building an extracurricular profile. I'm saying focus on doing extracurriculars that you benefit from and that provide that
Mhm.
you think are valuable regardless of their impact on college admissions. And a side effect of that is that you'll end up probably building a better extracurricular profile than the alternative because colleges will see that your activities and your involvement comes from real passion and real like you're following what you want to do and not just trying to live life on someone else's script. And I think that
Yeah.
that shines through in an application. They can tell if you've done a bunch of extracurriculars for the purpose of college admissions and don't actually care about the extracurriculars that you're doing.
Yeah, I keep telling this to people who ask me about this. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's like kind of hard for them to understand that it's not about flashiness, it's more about the impact you are able to
Mhm.
create in whatever niche you're in.
Mhm.
And so it's not about, oh, you did 25 clubs or something. It's about what you did for a single club, I
Mhm.
think. All right, that's all really great to learn from you. And like, could you walk us through one of your most unique extracurricular that you think Dartmouth would have found really impressive?
Okay, so in terms of uniqueness, because I was obviously like I was president of the speech and debate team, president of the quiz bowl team, but I think it's pretty clear what that means, right? Like I was doing a whole bunch of tournaments and I had good results at the tournaments and whatever. Like that's not going to set me apart. I think that one of the more unique ones was I was involved in this nonprofit organization called NEO, or Not Even Once. So it's a statewide organization in Florida, and we're hoping to like I'm going to stay involved with this even after high school. So we're hoping to expand outside of Florida. But basically, we do presentations in mostly high schools, but some middle schools about the fentanyl crisis in the United States. There was a survey done that our organization did a while ago that found that students were very, very uninformed about just how dangerous fentanyl is and how people who aren't addicted to drugs, aren't involved in, the drug scene, whatever you want to call it, end up dying of fentanyl overdoses. And we also looked at other anti drug efforts and tried to understand why they failed. And a lot of the time, because probably something that all of the viewers have been in is, you're sitting in a high school auditorium and your SRO or whatever your equivalent is of campus security goes up and tells everyone about how, oh yeah, you shouldn't do drugs and you also shouldn't bully people on social media and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And they list out like a million different things and your eyes kind of glaze over and you don't listen to any of it. And so we thought that the messages that these presentations were providing was so scattered that it was not having an impact. And so we designed a presentation that's focused specifically on the target audience is people who are not addicted to or involved in drugs. And it's specifically about here's how you avoid dying of a fentanyl overdose, right? Don't do off-label prescription drugs. That's our one message. And so we presented that presentation, whatever. We presented that to the school board, to the superintendent of schools, and they approved us to go into different local high schools with this presentation. So I think we presented to about 1,500-ish students across our district. And so that's something that I think it was unique and I think it was beneficial for my college application, but it's like I was saying, it's not something that I did for the purpose of college admissions, right? I wasn't like, how do I boost my college admissions chance? I know, let's embark on a community service project about fentanyl. No, it was like I saw the statistics about how many people were dying of a fentanyl overdose, saw this organization that existed, and was like, I want to get involved and I want to help with this organization. And that I would have done that regardless of the fact that it boosted my college application or not, because it came from an authentic passion that I have. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly that, but whatever, I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but whatever your viewers like, whatever your authentic passion is, something that you feel really strongly about and want to get involved in that. Not because it'll help your college application, but because it's worth doing in itself.
Right. So I think this gives a lot of context to our viewers. So before we wrap up this extracurricular
Mhm.
section, what's like one-liner advice or like one piece of advice you would give that someone who's looking to apply to a college like Dartmouth would be really beneficial for them?
So someone who is like a rising senior and right now wants to apply, or someone who
Yeah.
is starting high. Okay. So Let me think about that for a second. Reflect on why you did the extracurriculars that you did and show the
Mm-hmm.
college that answer. So, whatever internal, a lot of the time, because when I was creating my extracurricular profile, if we want to phrase it like that, I never started from a place of what am I passionate about and then worked into what do I want to do. I started with, I just enjoyed doing debate. I enjoyed doing quiz bowl. I was good at them. And so I got heavily involved in them. And then when I was doing the college admissions process, I reflected on, what is it internally within me that made me want to do debate and that made me want to do quiz bowl. And answering that question allowed me to create a unifying theme for my application in my extracurricular section, which I think was important to colleges. So you don't have to figure out before you do the extracurriculars what motivates you, but from seeing, like, just from reflecting on what have I done and why did I do it, you can get to answers about what motivates you as a person. And those answers, first of all, it's just useful in general to have a conception of yourself and what motivates you. And secondly, having that conception allows you to paint that picture to college admissions committees that will boost your chances of admission.
Great advice all around. Okay, let's move on to awards and honors. Could
Right.
you walk us through your awards and honors that got you into Dartmouth?
Name three awards and honors. So I'm trying to remember exactly how I handled that section. So I think that, okay, so three awards and honors that I had. I was state champion of something called the American Legion Oratorical Contest, which is a speech competition about the Constitution. I was a semi-finalist. No, that happened after I applied to college. Sorry. I was second place at the Isidore Newman debate tournament, which is a national circuit debate tournament. That sounds more impressive than it is because it's a relatively smaller tournament on the national circuit, but college admissions committees don't know that. And I was part of the 2024 county team for Quiz Bowl that won our state championship. If I had to pick the top three that I had by the time I applied to colleges, those were probably my top three.
Perfect. Like, what would you say to someone who's like just starting out and working on their
hmm
application profile? Like, how to like gather these awards and honors and craft
So
a good
for
application?
people who are just to be clear, are we talking about people who are just about to apply to college, or people who are just about to start working on extracurriculars?
I feel like it would be for people who are just starting out for extracurriculars because I feel like by the end, like if they're just looking to apply, it'll be much harder for them to gather awards and
Okay,
honors.
okay. So start broad and then narrow down. So when you're early on in your high school career, join as many clubs, take as many opportunities as you can, and that'll give you an exposure to a wide variety of different programs that your school offers. And then once you've had that exposure, as time progresses, you want to kind of rise up the ranks of the extracurriculars that you're involved in. That necessarily means you need to spend more time with them, and that necessarily means you need to spend less time doing other things. So after your freshman year, like an ideal profile would look something like this. And if you're not, just for viewers, if you're not a freshman, you can still apply these principles. I'm just talking about what an ideal would look like, which is that as a freshman, you join as many clubs, as many sports, as many extracurriculars as you possibly can. And then kind of have, I don't want to say bare minimum involvement, but just do what you can to remain an active member. And then you can see, what am I good at? What am I interested in? Where am I finding community? That kind of thing. And so the extracurriculars that you can really see a future in, I would stay much more heavily involved in those. And the stuff that you join and you're like, I don't know if this is my vibe, this isn't the community of people that I like, this isn't something that I have any kind of talent or skill or future in, those are the extracurriculars that you can drop. And so what happens when you do that is that you'll narrow down to only the extracurriculars that you genuinely really want to do during your high school career and that you're genuinely good at doing during your high school career. And then once you do that, awards and honors is going to follow naturally. Because if you're heavily involved in an extracurricular that you're really good at, you're just naturally going to start winning awards and winning honors in that extracurricular just through normal participation, right? Like you'll go to debate tournaments. If you're good at debate, you're going to win rounds and you're going to, break to higher levels. And, if you're involved in baseball or something like that, if you're really good at baseball, I'm sure you're going to win a lot of baseball games and you're going to get, I'm not familiar with what honors and awards exist in baseball, but I'm sure you can get them. So
Yep.
I guess that's my advice.
Great. All right, let's shift gears real quick and
hmm
let's talk about your essays and storytelling.
Yeah.
So, how did you turn your journey into compelling essays, that got you into Dartmouth?
Yeah, so my essays were probably the weakest part of my application because I don't think I spent as much time on them as I really should have. So I'll talk a little bit about what I did and also about what I wish I did in hindsight. So my personal statement I think was really strong, and that's where I basically answered the question of why I was doing what I was doing. And so, just for context for viewers, I talked about a philosophical idea that I believe in called existentialism, which is very briefly the idea that there's no like no one can give you meaning in life. You have to find your own meaning. And so the essay was about how it was a narrative of my life in the context of how was I striving to find meaning and find community in my life. Oops, hold on, sorry.
So,
Okay, I can start. So it was basically a narrative of my life that was
mhm,
written from the perspective of how am I trying to find meaning or purpose or community. And then on the supplemental essays, see, this is where I think I mishandled it because on the supplemental essays, I was basically trying to do the typical college admissions thing of like, oh, they're gonna admit me because I'm bisexual, or they're gonna admit me because of this past trauma that I had, which is like it's true to an extent, but there needs to be more. So it wasn't just the fact that I am bisexual or the fact that I have some kind of like past trauma, but I needed to tie that in to where I want to go in the future. I think some of and my essays, I'm like my essays weren't bad, to be clear.
mhm.
I talked about my identity and how my not being silent about my identity shaped the way I thought about what's it called? How like my Okay, I'll just describe the essay in more detail, so I don't have to talk really like broadly about it. So I started with a story of when I was like 5 years old and in a
Mm-hmm.
library, and my parents told me to be quiet. And then 12 years later, I was on a state like academic team trip, and I was talking to my friends in the hallway, and the the instructor told us also to be quiet. And so it was basically, I've been like all the time in my life told that I'm too loud, that I should be quiet. And like that's literally true. But what I tied it into was my identity as being bisexual. I talked about how my inability to be quiet about that identity shaped the way I interacted with the world and interacted with other people. And I also talked about how I thought it was valuable to not be quiet about that identity because it can serve as an inspiration for other people and it creates joy in your life, that kind of thing. That was one essay. And so I think that essay was relatively strong, but I think it didn't there were aspects where I didn't focus enough on who I wanted to turn into or what my ambitions were. And then the other essay was about like it was contrasting like the kind of idyllic conditions in life that I was born into with I don't want to go into a lot of detail on this in public, but into like new conditions that existed as a result of trauma and how my striving to overcome those conditions contributed to my development as a person and my development of a personal philosophy. And so those essays I think were strong because it told a story about myself. Where I think I could even have improved is I think they were too much about past me and not enough about future me, and they were lacking on concrete details. Where I talked about how, I believe in this philosophy because blah, 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 but not a lot about concretely how has this philosophy caused me to change my behavior, or, I overcame this trauma. Okay, cool. How did you overcome that trauma, right? So be more specific and future oriented, but also try to craft a narrative of yourself that's true and that is compelling. I guess that's the goal of your essays.
Feel like you gave like a lot of information,
Yeah,
and
I did. Sorry.
just to no, that's good, but I just want to make it concise. So could you just give us a summary of what you would do if you were starting out again and writing your essays for Ivy Leagues?
Yeah. So what I would do is in the personal statement, we talked about how you should reflect about what motivates you.
Mm-hmm.
So in the personal statement is the place where you're supposed to share your answer to that question and then talk concretely about how that motivation has shaped your involvement throughout high school. That's what I would probably do in the personal statement. And you can do different things, but that's just my personally how I handled it. And then your supplemental essays are your space to show whatever college you're applying to how you will add to their community. And so don't get too focused on the past, right? Obviously, your past uniquely shaped who you are as a person, but use your answers to those questions to give an idea to the colleges that you're applying to of the unique contribution that you personally will make to their campus.
I think this gives the viewers a lot of context. Okay, now let's talk about supplemental essays. Which Dartmouth supplemental essay was the most challenging to write?
What's the most challenging? Well, the cool thing about Dartmouth is that they have, I think, 8 options or 5 options or something like that, and you write 2 of them. So I wrote an essay about my background, and I wrote an essay about I wrote the Why Dartmouth essay. And so for me, neither of them were super challenging to write about just because I got to pick the essays. Some colleges don't do that. Like Harvard makes you write about an introduction to, like, if you had to introduce yourself to a roommate, what would you say in 100 words? And that essay was really challenging for me to write. That essay, there was no way I was getting into Harvard after that essay. It was really bad. But yeah, I mean, Dartmouth specifically, the process of writing the essays are not going to be super challenging just because you get to decide the topics. Colleges that don't let you decide the topics can have relatively challenging supplemental essays. And some colleges want a lot. Like Georgetown, for example, you don't apply through the Common App and you have to write 3 essays and they are like 500-word essays. Like Georgetown requires a lot of specific effort for their application. So, yeah.
Okay, I feel like a lot of people would also have this question. So, how did you research Dartmouth specifically to make your why essay response very authentic?
Yeah. So my Why Dartmouth essay was probably too light on details of the college itself. Because here's the thing about doing research about colleges online, which is that unless you're really diving in and spending a long, long time on research for every college, it's hard to find quickly stuff that's unique to each college. So I could find very easily Dartmouth has a debate team. Dartmouth has a quiz bowl team. This is the D plan. Right. And so if you want to write a stellar why Dartmouth essay, or why anywhere essay, why Northwestern, why Harvard, why Duke, you need to spend a lot of time looking into the college. I didn't. My application would have been better if I did, but what I did was I talked about why I wanted to go to Dartmouth in the context of how do I describe this? I talked about why I talked about why I wanted to go to Dartmouth as a result of some of the things that had happened to me in the past. And so it was essentially like, this is the background that I came from, and this background is not conducive. I didn't explicitly state that, but the background that I came from, because of that, the trauma I'm alluding to that I don't want to share, was it's rare that someone would go from that to going to a school like Dartmouth or an Ivy League school. And so I talked about wanting to go to Dartmouth as almost like a vindication of my past and my journey in growing as a person.
Okay.
Which not everyone is going to be able to have that option if you don't have the same kind of background as me. So really, if you want to write a killer why college essay, there's no way around in most instances. Just doing a lot of research about the college, finding out a lot of information about the specific programs that you're interested in, and crucially finding stuff that's unique to that college. AI might be helpful in doing that and trying to figure out what actually makes Dartmouth different from every other Ivy League college. But I didn't know, like, I now could write the Why Dartmouth essay, but that's because I've been sent like a 55-page packet of everything Dartmouth has to offer. And if you don't have access to that, it's relatively difficult to do.
So let's talk about how did you prepare for your Dartmouth interview?
How did I prepare for the interview? I mean, it was mostly just going online and doing some deeper research about the college than I was doing for my Why Dartmouth essay, because I wanted to have specific answers to, why did you go to Dartmouth? And then, you're interested in debate. How do you plan on continuing with debate in Dartmouth? That kind of thing. Like, those were some of the questions that I was asked about it. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think I have a ton of detailed advice on how to do research about a college beyond just, find as much as you can in terms of specific information about specific programs that you're interested in, and then use those in your answers, that's the advice you're going to hear from everyone, but I think it's essentially true.
think we've basically talked about everything. Okay, look, this is gonna be a question a lot of people are thinking about as well. For students who are starting late and who want to apply to somewhere like Dartmouth or other Ivy Leagues, what can realistically be accomplished in, let's say, 6 to 12 months?
So I guess it depends on what you mean by starting late, because I started late in that I didn't really, except for in standardized testing, I wasn't thinking a bunch about college admissions until like my junior year or summer between junior and senior year. So it wasn't like, if for your freshman and sophomore year, you're not doing things for college applications, not only do I think that's fine, I think that's probably good. But my the so okay, let me rephrase this. If in your freshman and sophomore year you don't have a strategy of how you're going to get admission into top colleges, I think that's fine. And if anything, I think that might actually be good because as I was talking about, I don't think that there's value in doing a lot of stuff specifically for the purpose of college admissions. So when you start late, really I think you're just most people who say they're starting late are actually starting at the same time everyone else starts, but they look at the select minority of people who like from freshman year on had this grand plan on how they're going to get into Harvard and then compare themselves to that and say I'm so far behind. So first of all, you're probably not starting late if you think you're starting late. On the specific question of how do you use 6 to 12 months, so like a semester or a year, to boost a college application that you think is lacking, I'm going to assume that the people who are asking this question have either a low test score or a low GPA or don't have a very strong extracurricular profile. And so if that's you, there are lots of ACTs and lots of SATs that you can take. So take as many of them as you can and study for them as much as you can because it's a test. This is a test that I wouldn't recommend cramming all your studying for, but it is something that you can boost your score on by quite a bit, quite quickly, by just taking the test a lot, getting a lot of experience, and studying a lot. So the SAT has a question bank of like thousands of SAT questions available online. I don't know if the ACT has something similar. It might. I just used my own test books and an ACT prep book that I got to prepare for the ACT. For your GPA, if you can take credit recovery is a lot of the time useful. So if you got a really bad class or if you got a really bad grade on something freshman year, sophomore year, whatever, a lot of the time your school will have programs where over the summer or online you can take the class again and get a new grade that supersedes your old one, and that'll boost your GPA. I would need to look at the specific, just in order to decide whether I recommend that program to someone, I would need to know the specific program, but I know at my school, you can get failed grades completely off your transcript by doing the class in credit recovery. I don't know how colleges look at credit recovery classes, but I would imagine having an A in credit recovery is going to be a lot better than having a D on your transcript, even
Yeah,
if they would prefer you
sure.
to not have credit recovery on there. And then in terms of extracurriculars, how do you do a lot in extracurriculars in 6 to 12 months? Find the one or two things that you're really interested in and passionate about. So for me, that was speech and debate and quiz bowl. For you, that could be something completely different. And then really prioritize being as involved in that program as you can, both in terms of a leadership perspective and a participation perspective. So I achieved in my senior year, even after I had applied to colleges, like a lot of stuff in speech and debate. So my speech and debate resume now looks a lot better than it did a year ago. And that's just because over the course of my senior year, I was spending tons and tons of time preparing speeches, practicing skills, going to competitions, and that kind of thing. And so there's no way to develop a strong extracurricular resume with a particular program or in general by if you're not putting in the hard work that's necessary to do that. There's really no way around. For 12 months, you need to be spending, 10, 15, 20 hours a week on this particular extracurricular and then competing at the highest levels and then doing that you'll be able to win those kinds of awards and honors and get that extracurricular section that you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. All great advice. I think this will answer a lot of people's questions who are
Mhm.
just, looking to get started, who might have thought that, well, we might be late or something. But I feel
Mhm.
like everyone like you still have something to build upon. Like people think that they do not, but I feel like a lot of students, they've been doing something, and if they just start building upon that, they're in like a pretty good space. All right. What would you change about how students approach college applications?
How students in general approach college applications or how I approach college applications?
Students in general you see around.
Okay. I think that people spend too much time trying to become a different person for the purpose of college applications when colleges want to admit you. They don't want to admit a version of you that you create for the, specific purpose of having a strong college application. And so when you try to become a different person that you think is more likely to get admitted to a college, two bad things will happen. The first is that I think that that's essentially unfulfilling because instead of living life how you want to live it and, being like making independent choices and being your own person, you try to live an inauthentic life that I don't think will make you as happy, and I also don't think will be as beneficial to you in the long term, even past college. Right? You might not be getting the kinds of experiences and skills and development that you would otherwise get because you've spent this whole time striving for this purpose of, a college acceptance that may or may not even come. And secondly, I think that it also paradoxically harms your chances of admissions because top colleges, get tons of applications. Dartmouth, I think, got 30,000 applications or something like that, and they fill up a class of 1,100 people each year. And so you don't want to be exactly the same as all the other applicants. And whenever you try to mold yourself into a new person for the purpose of college admissions, you end up looking exactly like the other 10, 15, 20,000 people who all are doing the exact same thing as you for the purpose of college admissions. And Dartmouth is not going to admit one of you over another. They're just going to reject all of you and then accept the people who are following genuine passions and genuine curiosities. And they see that in their application. And so the broad change that I would make is instead of starting from how do I get into a top college and then working back from there, start from the place of what do I want my high school experience or my high school education to look like? And then you fill in from that goal, extracurriculars and classes. And doing that, I think will have the effect of actually being better for your college application, but it will also have the effect of over your 4 years of high school, you're going to learn much more valuable skills and much more valuable information than you would if your entire goal was to get into a college application and not to actually follow the real purpose of high school, which is for you to learn and grow and develop as a person.
I think we have everything. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your weekend
Oh, of
and
course.
talking with me. I think this is going to be extremely helpful for all the students who are watching right now and we're just looking to get into college applications. I know it can be really daunting, you know?
Oh, definitely.
It's like, yeah. All right. Thank you so much again. And looking forward to keeping in touch with you. Yeah.